Welcome to Hired in IT. Our mission is simple: help you build the skills that employers actually want. Whether you're trying to land your first IT job, switch careers, earn a promotion, or increase your salary, we're here to help. Every video is thoroughly researched and designed to make complex IT topics easy to understand. If there's an IT topic you'd like us to cover, leave a comment below. We may turn your suggestion into our next video. Turning IT knowledge into career opportunities. 4:45 p.m. on a Friday. Your boss walks over, drops a USB stick on your desk, and says, "The monitoring script's been erroring out since Tuesday. Fix it before you leave." The last 3 hours before the weekend, staring at 2,000 lines of bash you didn't write. Last video you installed Claude Code. Now you open your terminal, CD into the project folder and type, "Find the bug in monitored sh." In moments, Claude reads the script, identifies the failing function, and shows you exactly what's wrong. You commit the fix, push to repo, and walk out the door at 5:02. That's not science fiction. It's what Claude Code CLI does in the hands of an IT pro who knows how to drive it. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with 4 concrete skills: launching and managing Claude Code sessions, controlling context and tracking costs, using the essential flags and / commands that turn good intentions into bulletproof automation, and weaving Claude Code directly into your everyday terminal habits, safely, without surprises. Most AI coding tools are chatbots. They give you a text response and you copy-paste the code. Claude Code is an agent. That means it doesn't just talk, it acts. When you ask it to fix a bug, here's what happens under the hood. It scans your entire codebase, understands your intent, plans edits across multiple files, executes them directly in your repository, runs any necessary verification like tests or linting, and when everything checks out, it can even commit the changes to Git. That's the difference between a coding assistant and a coding teammate. Open your terminal, navigate to a project directory, and just type Claude. This launches an interactive session where you can ask questions about your codebase, though the exact project scanning behavior may depend on your setup and current documentation. For quick one-shot tasks, many users run the P flag to get output without staying interactive. You can redirect that output to a file using the redirection operator. Always confirm flag behavior in the official docs. When you ask Claude to do something, it doesn't just guess. Claude Code acts as an agent that navigates your codebase using tools to search and read files. For instance, if you say, "Find where we're connecting to the database," Claude can look for config files, search for connection strings, and examine the relevant code. Knowing this helps you write more effective prompts. Tell Claude which files matter, and it'll zero in faster. Remember, it's an agent that executes, not just a chatbot that suggests. Inside an interactive Claude Code session, you can use / commands like .eos init to set up a Claude.md file. This file lives in your project root and holds instructions that Claude reads at the start of every session. Coding conventions, architecture notes, your team's style guide. It's like giving Claude a cheat sheet for your entire project, so you don't have to re-explain things every time you start working. Let's make sure you've understood why Claude BE matters. What problem does the init command solve? Take a moment before answering. The answer is consistency. The init command creates a Claude.md file where you can store project conventions, coding standards, architecture notes, and other guidance that Claude should remember every time you open the project. Instead of repeating the same instructions in every session, You define them once and let Claude start with the right context from the beginning. Sometimes you don't want to stay inside an interactive session. Claude Code supports a command line option that lets you send a single prompt, receive the result, and immediately return to the shell. You'll see the exact command syntax on screen during the demonstration. This workflow is ideal for quick code reviews, generating configuration snippets, analyzing logs, or producing documentation as part of a script. It keeps your terminal workflow fast without requiring a long-running conversation. Interruptions happen. Rather than starting over, Claude Code lets you reconnect to earlier work by restoring a previous session when that capability is available in your current version. This preserves the conversation context so you can continue investigating the same problem instead of repeating your prompts. Exact commands and options can change over time, so follow the on-screen demonstration and verify the latest syntax in the official documentation. The important habit is understanding that you can continue existing work instead of rebuilding context from scratch. Claude Code supports different billing models depending on how you work. If you spend most of your day working interactively with Claude Code, a subscription can provide predictable monthly costs and a simple experience. If you're building automation, integrating Claude into larger systems, or paying only for what you use, API-based billing offers greater flexibility and scales with demand. The best choice depends on your workflow rather than the size of your project. Because pricing, limits, and available plans can change over time, always verify the latest information in Anthropic's official documentation before choosing a billing option. Instead of repeating billing, I'd use the opportunity to introduce session planning, which is currently missing from the script. Planning your Claude sessions. One habit separates experienced Claude Code users from beginners. They don't try to solve an entire project in one conversation. Before starting, decide what success looks like for this session. Maybe you're investigating a bug, reviewing a pull request, generating documentation, or building a single feature. When each session has one clear objective, Claude stays focused. Conversations remain easier to review, and managing context becomes much simpler. Good session planning is one of the easiest ways to improve both productivity and response quality. Inside an interactive session, you can monitor your usage with /commands. /stats typically shows session statistics, such as turns, tool calls, and context usage. /cost tracks token spending in real time. Use these to stay under budget, especially before processing large files. Always check the current docs to confirm the exact output and availability, as commands may change. Quick review. Which /commands help you understand how much context you're using and how much your current session is consuming? Pause for a moment before answering. The answer is the session monitoring commands, such as stats, cost, and other available session management commands supported by your current version. These tools help you understand how your session is growing so you can decide when to compact, restart, or continue the conversation. A junior sysadmin once ran Claude on a production Apache config without locking it down. It saw inconsistent indentation, tried to fix it, and overwrote the whole file with a cleaned-up version that broke every virtual host. The outage lasted 4 hours. Don't be that admin. Claude Code provides safety mechanisms to restrict what the agent can do. For a code audit, limit it to read-only operations with the allowedTools flag, preventing any file modifications. Another flag, max turns, caps the number of tool call iterations to stop runaway loops before they eat your budget. Think of them as a circuit breaker. You set the limits before Claude starts, so even if it gets creative, it can't damage your files. Lock it down. This command restricts Claude to read-only tools. Now ask it to find authentication bugs. It scans the code, identifies insecure patterns, but if it tries to write a fix, it hits a wall. Perfect for security audits. You get the analysis without risking a single line of source code. That's the safety net. No accidental write operations, period. Runaway loops are a real risk when an agent gets creative. The max turns flag says, you get 10 tries, no more. If Claude hits the cap, it stops gracefully and shows a summary of what it did. In a CI pipeline, you might set it even lower to keep runs fast and predictable. It's the difference between a quick cleanup and a deep rabbit hole. Without this, a runaway agent can burn hundreds of tokens in minutes. That's why you cap it. Let's test one of today's most important lessons. Before allowing Claude Code to analyze or automate work in a production environment, what should you configure first? Take a moment before answering. The answer is your safety boundaries. Restrict the tools Claude can use. Limit long-running agent behavior where appropriate, and always understand the permissions you've granted before executing automation. Good automation starts with good guardrails. Claude Code can work with standard input, letting you pipe text directly into it for non-interactive processing. For example, you might echo a question and pipe it to Claude with the -p flag. But without restricting tools, that same pipeline could accidentally overwrite files. We'll lock that down in a moment. Combined with grep, awk, or cron, this turns Claude into a powerful, scriptable AI agent. Last Black Friday, a junior sysadmin used Claude to quickly generate a disk monitoring script and ran it via Cron without specifying max turns or restricting tools. The script kept analyzing logs and generating new entries recursively, filling the disk within 20 minutes and crashing the entire site. Let's build that same monitoring solution safely. Write a clear prompt describing disk, memory, and CPU checks. Let Claude produce the bash script, redirect it to a file, make it executable, and schedule it with cron. But always add max turns to cap runaway loops. No staring at a blank editor, and no disaster looming. A colleague once piped a 5,000-line log file to Claude during an outage, forgetting to restrict tools. Claude helpfully rewrote the entire file with a tidy summary and wiped the forensic evidence. Don't be that person. Instead, tail just the last 100 lines. Set the allowedTools flag to read only, and ask Claude to identify timeout patterns. It scans for anomalies and suggests a root cause without ever touching your files. Check the current docs to verify the allowedTools syntax, and you'll run a safe, powerful triage that preserves every byte of your original logs. You're creating a scheduled job that analyzes server logs every night. Which two ideas from today's lesson help you build that workflow safely? Pause before answering. The answer is to use non-interactive execution for repeatable automation and restrict Claude's permissions so it can inspect information without making unintended changes. Automation should reduce repetitive work, not introduce unnecessary risk. Many developers like combining Claude Code's terminal workflow with the visual review experience provided by Visual Studio Code. Whether you use an official integration, a community-supported extension, or simply keep your editor and terminal open side by side, the goal is the same. Review every proposed change before accepting it. Claude helps generate code quickly, while your editor helps you understand, compare, and validate those changes before they become part of your project. Long debugging sessions gobble up tokens, slowing responses and muddying answers. First, run context to see the damage, token count, loaded files, conversation length. Then, compact condenses everything into a summary, reclaiming 80% or more of your token budget. It's like hitting the refresh button on your session's memory. A before and after check with Yanchcha cost will show the dramatic savings. One question many people ask is whether they should keep using the same Claude conversation forever. The answer is no. If you've changed projects, switched from debugging to implementation, or the conversation has accumulated too much unrelated context, start a fresh session. A focused conversation usually produces clearer reasoning than one carrying hours of unrelated history. Your project depends on a shared library sitting in another directory. Instead of copying files around, use /add-dir followed by the path. Now Claude can read that code as if it were part of your project. You can immediately ask it to integrate that library's database class into your current script. No symlinks, no manual moves, just instant access. A killer CLAUDE.md is your team's coding playbook, written for Claude. At minimum, include sections for project purpose, coding conventions, branching rules, security notes, test commands, and how you want Claude to assist. To make it concrete, a snippet like linting, slint, Python style, pep8, no console, log left in production shows Claude exactly what you expect. This file turns Claude from a generic assistant into a team member that follows your house rules. Let's review one of the most useful workflow habits from today's lesson. When should you use the compact command? Take a moment before answering. The answer is when a conversation has become long enough that older context is slowing Claude down or making its responses less focused. Instead of starting over immediately, compact summarizes the important information so you can continue working with a much smaller context window. If the conversation has shifted to an entirely different task, however, starting a fresh session is often the better choice. Most people begin by using Claude Code on a local project, but its capabilities can extend much further through integrations such as the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Think of MCP as a standardized way for Claude to communicate with external tools and services. Instead of working only with files on your computer, Claude can interact with systems such as issue trackers, documentation platforms, messaging tools, and databases, depending on the integrations you've configured. The exact setup process will vary, so always follow the latest official documentation. The important idea is that Claude can become part of a larger automation workflow rather than operating in isolation. One agent does not fit every job. Here's the workflow. First, define your agents in a configuration file, your project's Claude.md, or a dedicated agents file. Then, you can invoke them via the agent flag. For example, running Claude with the agent flag in Code Reviewer launches Claude with that agent's specific instructions, so it reviews code through a security lens without extra prompting. You can also pass agent definitions directly with the agents flag as JSON. Pre-configured agents mean consistent, repeatable behavior every time. Documentation is the chore nobody wants. But with Claude, a professional README is one command away. Just point it at your project and ask for a README, with sections like installation, usage, and API reference. Claude scans your code, pulls in the key details, and writes a polished file you can push right away. No more blank README files staring at you at 3 a.m. Every IT pro wants hands-off automation. Here's the flow. Generate a long-lived OAuth token. Export it so Claude can authenticate non-interactively. Then schedule a nightly audit via Cron or a GitHub action. You wake up to a fresh security report without touching a browser. That's the dream. Before we run this, a quick definition. OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, publishes the top 10 list of the most critical web security risks, like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Now, to audit securely, lock Claude to read-only tools, read, grep, glob. Then ask it to audit your app for those exact vulnerabilities, show the dangerous patterns, and suggest fixes, but never edit a single file. Claude crawls the codebase, finds unsanitized input in raw SQL strings, spots template injection points, and delivers a detailed vulnerability report without touching your source code. Let's finish with one more review. When should you continue an existing Claude Code session? And when is it better to start a new one? Take a moment before answering. Continue an existing session when you're still working on the same problem and the existing context remains helpful. Start a new session when you've changed tasks, the conversation has become unfocused, or outdated context is making Claude less effective. Managing session context is just as important as writing good prompts. Let's lock in the workflow you've built throughout this lesson. You now know how to launch Claude Code from any project, establish consistent project context with a CLAUDE.md file, choose the right billing model for your workflow, monitor session usage, and keep long conversations focused through effective context management. You've also learned how to automate one-off terminal tasks, safely limit Claude's permissions before working in sensitive environments, analyze logs and configuration files without risking unintended changes, integrate Claude into your everyday development tools, and extend its capabilities through the Model Context Protocol, MCP. Most importantly, you've learned to treat Claude Code as an engineering assistant, not an autopilot. Give it clear context. Define appropriate safety boundaries, review every recommendation, and verify the results before moving to production. Those habits will make you faster without sacrificing quality or control. You've learned how to launch Claude Code, manage project context, automate terminal workflows, control permissions, and integrate Claude into your daily IT tasks. In the next lesson, we'll build a real full-stack application with Claude Code, combining everything you've learned so far into a practical, production-style project. If this lesson helped you, subscribe and continue with the next video in the Claude Masterclass. The skills build on one another, and each lesson expands what you've already learned. Remember, careers aren't built by watching videos. They're built by applying what you learn. Pick one thing from today's lesson, build it, document it, and share it. That's how you get hired. Thanks for watching Hired in IT, where we're turning IT knowledge into career opportunities.